just press run the 2AC, which is all you gotta do. Yeah. Like,
any Chinese individual mandate plus multi-gator system single players and top of
still go for your best card.
Any Chinese
you don't just like,
be servicing any China cars or
be like, oh, the infrastructure is like terrible art, and now we're just like going for it. Like, still read the quality stuff.
They explode topical being affirmative, target-based negative social positions. Our evidence has intended to find years to be the key to effective policy discussions. Midterms that will minimize damage to the Senate. Now that protects filibuster conduct 828-24. The Massachusetts Republican gains our history and those living incumbents are deep started states are vulnerable. The magic 60-state threshold does not seem realistic with an unpopular Trump, although Republicans could easily start 2019 with more seats. The most relevant scenario for Democrats would be a 50-50 Senate.
I'm not single purchase. Do you want anything?
Be a 50-50
it's okay. I'm going to be taking them to
let's see election like 17. Single paper would be great for the Republican Party because it will make Democrats claim to be the party compassion with Trump supporters would actually like it. It's not far-fetched that the reform would fail. Trump would pursue the thing he's been praised for years. 60% will leave the government guarantee health care. Even Republicans move towards this position and filibuster approved majority causes immigration prices die at 16. Trump will face political constraints to build a border wall and deport Harley filibuster approved to overcome Harley filibuster approved to overcome the 60-vote majority. Republicans will need Democrats to pass anything an obstacle and crushes U.S. acts. 17. Food direction. Trump's actions on immigration cut their workforce. The wall deportation, create funding. Farms will close on unauthorized immigrants comprise 20% of crop U.S. production and cause food shortages globally. MR 15. U.S. world relief promotes a more stable world country facing hunger faces conflict. 30% of U.S. agriculture goes to developing countries in nuclear war after 12. Conflicts in the next century will most likely be fought over resources. People are hungry. States not stable. Bloody wars follow. An increasingly incredible scenario for World War III's resource conflict. Darfur, Rwanda. I'm trying to keep it low. It's like, you know, they're probably outside, right?
That doesn't really matter.
No. Darfur, Rwanda, Ethiopia, and the Balkans experience such wars. The UK Ministry of Defense, CIA, CSIS, and the Austrian peace identified famine trigger from the war states. 50 state governments and all relevant some territories to establish regional governments and organizations coordinating their state and regional approaches to establish single-payer national health insurance in the United States of America. The plan to cover comprehensive health services and be available to all representatives of counterplans legal and should not be preempted in states. So they have to call federal follow-on. Manual 16. The current political environment makes it likely for home self-care to be achieved at federal level or well positioned to take the lead. Many states are already even innovating and seeing positive results. States have the considerable authority over the regulation of insurance care. States run their Medicaid chip plans and exchanges in individual insurance. The innovations are some states independent can be replicated and federalism. Federalism, healthcare mandates state backlash and undermines federalism. 10 states resist when they carry federal institutions. States may generate arguments grounded in federalism. Society efforts to nationalize public health. National health care reforms face challenges on ground. States' resistance to increase federal control to the LCA's mandate as unconstitutional. States' concerns over the rights and makes warming level states key since 17. When it comes to the fight against global warming, federalism is America's last communist was blocking Obama's efforts to stop global warming. Federalism, private sector combined to limit damage. 30 states are putting energy sources in place to protect over the decision to withdraw U.S. from Paris extinction. Crib 17. I'm talking about they will cause temperatures rising warming longer without the doubtful humans could stop at billions. We will have to move on to severe conflict. 35% of species will be extinct. Inability, hunger, poverty, and conflict, shortage, disease, disputes, and natural disasters. Nuclear war is possible for extinction. I'll take a break, so I know.
Yeah, I mean, what time are you at?
I was in time.
Oh, that's fine.
Trying to go as fast as possible.
Sounds fine. Like, straight up, I'm not getting this.
I'm trying to be super cognizant of not stopping in between.
That's good. That'll help you. They were here like a little bit ago. I'm not sure whether they were here.
I'm going to see how long politics takes. Just because I haven't read it. We're not going to legitimize the rest of the GOP agenda, the choice dies 4 more out of 17. Failure to repeal Obamacare spell doom for the rest of Trump's agenda, healthcare, collapse, fame, poison the well, future for the big ticket legislative deals, unless we can get away with the big one on the board. I don't know how to pull things together. Obamacare, smooth the path for the affordable health bill is the linchpin of this entire agenda, and collapses W2A, file 16. Tax reforms, trade was poor, but even blowing up the W2A is practically inviting retaliatory tariffs and will allow WTO. Republicans will want to include border adjustments. Given the size of the U.S. and how much trade George 7 previous fight threatened WTO as a distance and nuclear war. Heaven 12 complies with WTO rules of most important to nuclear arm war. The U.S. China and Russia played the entity and purchased it keep fingers on the button. The nations receive the WTO's option for dispute resolution. 45 seconds. Under 45 seconds.
Under 45?
Like 41.
Cool.
Is there anything maybe could be highlighted down or trimmed just a tad bit? Or,
yeah, why don't you highlight down some innovation stuff a bit?
Innovation, okay.
You ready to do that?
I could do it.
No, that's what I said.
Do federalism.
Nice.
The stream is active. I'm going to leave my stuff here.
Okay.
The framing is from here all the way to like the edge of view. So like speaking from here will do the best.
Oh, okay.
You know, and then I'm gonna tell them when they get here if they could cross-sex slightly closer to you. It'd be good. Alright, kids. Keep going.
How wide does the field of view on that?
What?
How wide does the field of view on that?
For them?
The camera.
Oh, the camera's over there on that little chair.
Oh, okay.
That's just the microphone. So I just had it from about that water bottle to like the edge of the table. So
Okay,
yeah, technically that podium is there, but it's like the far corner versus like here you'll be like right in the center of the screen.
Yeah.
And so, you know,
That makes sense.
really it's audio that matters, you know, but
Right. Thanks for doing all this streaming stuff, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like always watching your videos. I'm happy that someone's doing it.
It's so
It's good to know that it gets watched.
Yeah.
You know,
It's-
sometimes it's like, why do I do this?
I'll play the
I was like, okay, people use it, so it's good to know.
So where are we going?
You were gonna get your golden corral dinner. Isn't that exciting?
Yay! But first we have to upgrade the oven before we do
Wait, are we
that.
gonna be on like YouTube channel?
Something like that. I mean, he does like other.
Yeah. If we don't upgrade the oven,
I mean, he does like other events too.
and then get all the way.
Stay here. Don't go back in. Don't go back in. So yeah, that little black thing's the camera. That's the microphone. It goes from like here to that side. So if you
the camera is...
that's the camera.
Oh,
over
okay, I got you. I was like,
Yeah, yeah. So like while you're sitting prepping, you're not on camera. But so if you speak from here and just cross-X from here, you'll be on it.
Are we crossing here?
Yeah, I don't care either way. But if you cross-X sitting down from where you are, you won't be seen, but you'll be heard. Okay. All right. Thank you all for letting me stream it and helping novice participation education.
Novice. Okay, that was you.
I've been running your 1AC all day, so I was like, maybe I should see what they do with it.
Well, we're seeing it in some auditorium and like using
It's much better seeing it live.
tutorial thing for novices.
It's much better seeing it live.
Yeah.
want to be on the email chain?
Yes, of course.
Okay. If I could just get your email, that would be great. I promise I will get well. Ready when you are. Email?
1 second. Oh, you want me email? I thought you were about to.
No, I was
My
fine.
apologies.
You have the end part first. This one?
SM
Yeah, we usually do that.
ULLIN6 at mix.wvu.edu.
No, alright, I'm actually kind of unable to see the emails that were written on there. This is Rochester Round 5.
Yeah.
Oh, sure, I almost forgot to include you. Don't worry, I caught my mistake. Alright, test has been sent out. If anyone didn't get it, my apologies. I will remedy this situation.
Oh, it's a test, okay.
Yeah, just the test, yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone good? Good, good? Alright, I'll send the 1AC then.
Screw my runtime. Did I lose it? Oh no, I can't help you here.
That's really harsh.
I feel one color anyway, so. Oh, you should speak up there, just because.
Oh, wait, that's echo, please.
Yeah.
Like here?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, just because it's like closer to like the
Hello?
stuff.
Analysis.
People hold what you have for the one and see. It's already uploaded. Oh, cool. Oh, hold up.
I'm sorry, I think I already asked this, but does everyone have it?
Yeah.
Alright, let's start this one. Inherency. Status quo healthcare is inadequate. This is Cohen 17. The first 7 months of 2017, 2.81 million were uninsured. No significant change from 2016. McCann, those remaining will be difficult to cover even with tweaks to the ACA. Intermittent coverage is hazardous to percent of individuals under 65 and HDHP continue to increase. Tens of millions remain exposed to physical suffering and personal debt, problems that can be ameliorated by single payer. And plan. The United States federal government should pass legislation that establishes single payer national health insurance in the United States of America. The plan should cover comprehensive healthcare service, excluding prescription drugs that use animal testing, and be funded by a progressive tax scheme. Advantage 1 Health. Lack of insurance kills one person every 12 minutes in the U.S. History, 2009. The study conducted at Harvard Medical School found that lack of insurance causes 44,789 excess deaths annually. Previous estimates put that figure near 18,000. Methods used were similar to those by the IOM in 2002. Increasing the uninsured, eroding medical safety net, likely explains a substantial increase in deaths. The uninsured more likely to go without needed care from lack of health insurance. One dies every 12 minutes. And expanding health insurance solves death. Multiple studies prove. Clark 17. A host of studies show that access to health care does not prevent premature death in Americans with conditions such as cancer, diabetes, heart disease, respiratory failure, and asthma. Emergency rooms don't provide ongoing treatment for chronic conditions. The uninsured are most less likely to receive preventative services. A study found that in nearly 45,000 deaths a year, the accumulated weight of evidence makes it clear that health insurance results in lower morbidity and lower mortality. And single payer solves the most efficient path towards universal coverage. Ending private insurance is key. Gaffney 16. The U.S. spends strikingly more on health insurance than any other industrialized nation. Outcomes lag. 27 million remain uninsured, many facing rising copays and deductibles that compromise access and leave them vulnerable to ruinous medical bills. We propose a single payer covering all Americans for all needed medical care. By dramatically reducing admin costs and other inefficiencies, the NHP could eliminate uninsureds and underinsureds without any increase in overall health care expenditures. Publicly financed would work on existing private hospitals because of investor ownership providers known to divert funds of care to profits. NHP would cover all medically necessary services without copay or deductibles. Tracking copay and deductibles entails substantial administration of effort. NHP would ban private insurance that duplicates public coverage. Inclusion of the affluent reserve is an important guarantee of adequate coverage. The NHP would fund hospital with the global budget lump sum covering all operating expenses, eliminating per-patient billing. Negotiated annually based on operating expenses, change in demand of output prices, and proposed service enhancements. Budgets could not be used for ads, profits, or bonuses. At present, hospital CEOs garnish funds from millions of transactions, hospital billing charges, and complex schedules. Systems encourage rampant gaming through cherry picking. Global budgeting with separate explicit capital allocation would provide a cost-neutral framework, minimizing hospital incentive to avoid particular patients or upcode. General global budgets would eliminate billing relating documentation, freeing up resources to enhance clinical services. In Scotland, the Canada administration consumes 12% of hospital spending versus 25% in the U.S. And NHP could shift about $150 billion annually from hospital admin to patient care. And the second advantage is structural violence. Medical deserts are a major cause of lack of health care for disadvantaged populations. Collins 14. Minorities, the elderly, and lower-income people suffer the most. Death as a result of heart attacks and strokes increase more than 10% for those who have to travel further. The ripple effect of closures on surrounding communities is time to reassess market forces. Often facilities shut and have areas heavily populated with Black, Latinos, and low-income residents. That leaves those with less access. A succession of closures has created medical deserts. In Detroit, more than 30 hospitals have closed in the last 50 years, leaving only 4 emergency care facilities to serve more than 700,000 people. Every hospital closure means deaths. And single-payer solves, removes financial incentives that create medical deserts. Gaffney 16. NHP would fund all major capital investments through explicit appropriations. Regional health planning boards would allocate capital funds for new facilities, equipment based on medical need. Too often, profitability reflects not efficiency or quality, but avoidance of unprofitable patients and services. The process of creating medical deserts and lavish redundant medical palaces that compete for lucrative patients attempt to provide unneeded care. And expanding insurance decreases racial disparities in health outcomes. Best studies show Kovadeski 15. African Americans experience higher mortality than their white peers. We compared all-cause mortality of 547,441 African Americans to 2,525,525 patients care from the VA. We compared outcomes in African American versus white individuals in the NNNES. African American race was associated with 24% all-cause lower mortality, 37% of CHD. Methods: large sample size, median follow-up years of 7.9 years. In this large cohort of over 3 million, found significant differences. Substantially lowered incidence of CHD and lower all-cause mortality in African Americans compared to whites. Deprivation of African Americans point to the importance of breaking down the many remaining barriers faced by the African American community. Open access healthcare systems provide comprehensive healthcare. An analysis of DoD enrollees found similar rates of quality care indicators. Black and white patients are examination of basic health metrics, common health screening, and medications suggests that basic health care delivered after enrollment is not racially discriminatory. Previous studies show that the use of VA ambulatory care eliminated the disparity in availability to obtain healthcare services between African American and white veterans. In the UK PDS, African American patients experience substantially reduced risk of all-cause and diabetes-related mortality, suggesting that receiving similar care in a control system may result in benefits for minorities. And current animal testing regimes maintain anthropocentrism, and they destroy the ethics of healthcare. This is PEGS 15. Given the differences in opinion about the efficacy of animal experimentation, moral orthodoxy is compromised. Given that the non-human experiments are given primacy, the determination remain restricted by an anthropocentric standpoint. I want to center on the implementation of more inclusive ethic, informed by universal concern about the suffering of all oppressed beings, a fundamental shift away from the anthropocentric approach with the goal of profit and human health, the abolition of animal experimentation. And current insurance programs drastically underserve disabled populations who can't afford basic medical necessities. Drayoni 06. Participants were limited by insurance restriction, a limited percentage of dentists applied Medicaid. Consumers reported difficulties obtaining rehabilitation services. Insured did not pay for ASL or Braille classes. Lack of coverage for medications was a substantial barrier for those with psychiatric impairments or HIV/AIDS, children with special hair needs, and chronic illness. Some report difficulty obtaining coverage for devices critical to their health. Individuals who require certain types of equipment incur serious financial burdens. Consumers with financial and developmental disabilities experience major problems with Medicare and Medicaid. And single payer is key for the feminist movement. Day and Brown 17. Single payer is a critical feminist fight. Women are more likely to receive health insurance. Women are more likely to receive health insurance as dependents, which means that losing a spouse through death or divorce puts them at a greater risk. To universalize the comprehensive and inclusive care is an urgent and critical feminist reform. The California Nurse Association, leading in charge of single payer and 8,000 members, these workers are overwhelmingly women. By uniting with workers against CEOs, we are committing to working class solidarity in practice, not just in theory. And market-based insurance programs force women to pay more, are empirically worse for the poorest populations. Woodhandler and Himmelstein 07. Women do not choose their sex. Consumer-directed healthcare would penalize them. Chronic illness premiums will skyrocket. Tax breaks selectively reward wealthiest Americans. Selectively discourage low-cost primary and preventative care. Instead of skip on low-cost services are unlikely to constrain all over health spending. Higher copay result in ED visits and deaths for the poor and elderly. CDHC sets in motion high resource transfer to the sick and middle-aged pay more. Women spend. Workers bear more of the burden. And single-payer healthcare is a vital step in decommodification of society and the potential to challenge state power. Malhotra 14. In order to fully include disabled people, we need to value people based on their contributions to society, not as assessed by the profits. So many disabled people will never be efficient in capitalist terms. Refusing commodification would assist those who are challenging capitalist exploitation more broadly. We could implement measures to empower disabled people in the existing labor markets. Disability sports will no longer be linked to a particular job. A strategy that refuses commodification with lessen tensions that exist within the disability rights movement. Focus on decommodification would cultivate solidarity and develop a greater capacity to challenge the state. Campaigns for a single-payer universal health care program are an important first step. And framing insolvency. Single payer is a material benefit that alleviates the suffering of a status quo. This is true even if structural inequalities persist after playing Gaffney 16. Even if the abolition of slavery, an amalgam of racist terrorism, social segregation, economic marginalization, and political exclusion carried these health inequalities forward into the present day. The government's failure to create a public health system played a foundational role in structuring American healthcare inequalities both by class and race. Black infant deaths were significantly higher in Jim Crow states than non-Jim Crow states, yet in the late 60s, the death rate of the former did improve. Political change can yield improvements in health over time. Reams of evidence point to social and economic inequalities as drivers of racial inequalities, poverty associated with a panoply of poor health outcomes, differences in healthcare access associated with race, like being uninsured, are factors as well. More needs to be done about the physician bias, but increasing the universalism of the health system may play an important role in reducing inequalities. Economic redistribution as a tool against racial health inequalities are critical considerations in the racial healthcare justice. Hispanics and blacks are disproportionately uninsured. Covering these extended millions seems critical. The U.S. health system imposes substantial financial burdens at the point of use in copay deductibles and coinsurance, which deter care. These forms of cost sharing disproportionately harm minorities. Would universal health care do much to combat racial inequalities if we were a single-payer system that eliminated out-of-pocket expenses, or would it replicate current biases? Yes to both. So, broad research has suggested that even if these biases persist, a fully universal system might nonetheless be a powerful tool in reducing racial health inequalities. A quality single-payer system like the VA, study published in Circulation, the VA population in the risk of stroke was higher among blacks compared to whites. Risk of coronary disease as well as death was lower among blacks. This, with more than 3 million subjects, multiple studies together point to a reduction of racial health inequalities. The wealthy live longer than the poor. If incomes differ by race as they do, life expectancy would differ by race, and if racism were eradicated in its entirety from the healthcare system. We are living in that neoliberal era in which economic inequality and health inequality are yoked. I'm going to cut the card there. Application to endorse the plan is an improvement of structural inequality over work in Mario 06. Inequality may play important aspects in health, such as life continues to be more rule than exception in America. Thousands of well-trained professionals who deliver medical care in the image of U.S. healthcare, however, this is only part of the reality. Millions receive too little care because they're underinsured, uninsured, or rely on Medicaid. The world's poster child for excess and deprivation. Some people get more serious services than needed, while others get inadequate or no services, with 1,000 dying each year result due to individuals lacking health insurance. Settling poor and low-income families with higher payments and premiums for healthcare only further reduces their disposable income and exacerbates the effects of poverty, which can worsen the height of a vicious cycle. A private health insurance promotes inequality. Health insurance is supposed to distribute healthcare according to need rather than the ability to pay, achieved by collecting and redistributing money from the health sick, which helps subsidize costs for those who would otherwise be unable to pay. This community rating, insurance companies look at different approach, experience rating, rather than pooling into one large risk pool. Matures divide them into high and low risk subsets. Companies can exclude or demand higher premiums from high risk groups. This principle of spreading risk over an entire group rather than targeting the risk by health status has been replaced. Disparities in healthcare can be lessened, opportunity provided, and the landscape which can be made less even. Mountains can be minimized and valleys raised. Public policy, including the conception of interconnection, will result in a broader recognition of healthy society. Mark the card there, and O'Rourke and Mario open for cross-X.
Okay, so sorry, Lee, start the timer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so your evidence that you read on the health advantage says that it causes lack of health insurance causes 45,000 deaths annually. This is citing a study in 2002 before the ACA. Do you have any evidence that's like post?
We actually have multiple. So that basically is not citing evidence from the 2002. They're basically saying they looked at the methodologies of the IOM study in 2002 and they mimicked
either way, this evidence is from 2009, which is before the Affordable Care Act. Do you have any evidence after the ACA that quantifies how many people?
Yeah, that's the Clark 17 evidence, which talks about like a host of studies shows.
Yeah, so this Clark 17 evidence, the only part that has a number says that a study published in the American Journal of Health, Public Health in 2009 found that 45,000 deaths per year. That's from 2009. Do you have any evidence post ACA?
Do we we
have a ton of other evidence about medical deserts, about racial disparities in health. Almost all of our cards are post ACA. The fact that we can't provide the fact that we can't provide I'm sorry, I'm off camera. The fact that we can't provide an exact number doesn't mean that these deaths aren't happening. All of our evidence talked about these deaths happening. I don't think we need to provide an exact number to say that it's a huge impact.
So this Gaffney card, the one in the health advantage, I understand you have a lot.
It's
talking about a single-payer national health program, with national health program capitalized, indicating that it's like a term of art, I guess. Do you fiat this national health program?
You mean our app?
Yeah, I mean, this app is talking about a specific form of single-payer. Is the app that specific form of single-payer?
Our app is our plan text. We fiat that our plan text happens, and
basically, so our plan text is talking about comprehensive care for all Americans. This is exactly what it's saying. It's literally in the card. It says we propose single payer covering all Americans for all needed medical care.
What percentage? I mean, do you have like any idea like what percentage of drugs currently are like tested on animals before they're distributed?
So we don't have that evidence in our 1AC, but we have discussed this in past rounds, and so we can definitely put that if you provide some need for that evidence. But we basically say that there are alternatives in the status quo that aren't being used because of profit motives. When we're changing those profit motives, we are reducing the need for this animal experimentation. And basically switching up. Well, I guess our card is really talking about how do we understand our relationship of the human and the non-human, and where by breaking down decommodification, by changing the entire structure of it, we're making a radical demand on the state to reassess that relationship.
Do you use all like other forms of animal testing, or just like animal testing in healthcare?
I think the app is a specific instance in healthcare. We think that other forms of animal testing are bad too.
I get that. That's the whole point. We're reassessing our evaluation toward the human and the non-human by making this radical demand on the state. That doesn't mean it's the only thing that could happen. It's just a topical way that we can address this.
Okay. I guess I'm good.
Cool.
It's about time.
All right. Prep? No prep?
No prep.
All right.
Send it over.
Great.
Oh,
6 off, and then case in the order of health, then structural violence. Told you there would be a lot.
Yeah.
It is sent, by the way.
What's that?
It is sent. So, like.
Oh, it's sent. Oh, I thought it was set. Can I pop this back here? Sure. What? Can you pop this back? Yes, good.
So let me know when you're ready. 6 off, and then health, and then structural violence.
I got it. I'm ready to go.
Everyone ready? Alright. T. NHI must be an individual mandate plus a multiplayer system, single pairs, and topical top 16. NHI has been used in multiple meanings. It is necessary to clear up misunderstanding as NHI requires residents to take out private insurance using individual resources. This is not one single public scheme. NHI is a multiplayer system which citizens choose their insurers. Vote neg. Limits the explode topic under another entire lit base which skews negative research precision. Their evidence has tend to divide and exclude key to effective policy discussions. Midterms. Demo minimize damage to Senate now protects the filibuster conjugate 824. The map suggests a big Republican gains, but history argues against incumbents in deep red states vulnerable. The magic seat threshold does not seem realistic. Unpopular Trump, although Republicans easily start 2019 with more seats. The best possible scenario for Democrats would be 50-50 Senate. That seems improbable. Single payer is a win for Trump. 50 election. Blake 17. Single payer would be great for the Republican Party because it will eliminate Democrats' claim to be the party compassion where Trump supporters would actually like it. It's not far-fetched that reform would fail and Trump would get pursued. The whole thing has been praised for years. 60% believe the government should guarantee health care. Even Republicans have moved towards this position. And filibuster-proof majority causes immigration prices die. 16. Trump will face political traits of billable order, ball, and deport. Hardly filibuster-proof to overcome the 60-vote threshold. Republicans need Democrats to pass anything an obstacle. And crushes U.S. Ag. 17. Food production. Trump's actions on immigration will cut their workforce wall. Deportations, grant funding, farms will close on unauthorized immigrants comprise of 20% of U.S. crop production and causes global food shortages. And Mark 15. U.S. World Food Relief promotes more stable world. Country facing hunger faces conflict. 50% of U.S. agriculture exports goes down developing countries. And nuclear war. FDI 12. Conflicts in the next century will most likely be fought over lack of resources. People are hungry. States not stable. Bloody wars follow. Increasingly credible scenario for World War III's resource conflicts. Darfur, Rwanda, 3 Balkans experience such wars. Ministry of Defense, CIA, CSIS, and also peace industry all identify famines as a trigger for nuclear war. And states. 50 state governments and all relevant sub-federal territories should establish national governance organizations to coordinate interstate and interregional approaches to establish a national single-payer health insurance in the United States of America. The plan should cover comprehensive health insurance care service, including prescription drugs. That animal testing can be funded by progressive tax scheme and lobby the federal government for Section 132 waivers under the Affordable Care Act. The Department of Labor should clarify that the specific counterplan is legal and should not be preempted. States saw they have the authority to cause federal follow-on. Manual 16. Current political environment makes it unlikely for reforms to health care will be achieved at the federal level. States are well positioned to take the lead. Many states are already innovating, seeing positive results. States have considered authority over the regulation of insurance care. States can run their Medicaid chip-in exchanges in individual health insurance. The innovators that some states implement can be replicated. And federalism. Federal health care mandates at state backlash and then undermines federalism. Hodgedall 10. States will resist what may be characterized as federal institutions. States generate arguments around federalism to stymie efforts to nationalize public health. National health healthcare reforms face challenges grounded in states' resistance to increased federal control attempts to derail ACA's mandate is unconstitutional, reflects states' concerns over their rights, and makes warming levels states key since 17. When it comes to the fight against global warming, federalism is America's last Congress blocking Obama's effort to fight global warming. Federalism and the private sector's combined limit damage. About 30 states have green energy strategies in place to protest over the decision to withdraw from Paris and extinction. Crib 17. Unlocking the method would cause temperatures to rocket. Warming would happen so fast, doubtful humans could stop it. Billions would have to move there. In severe conflict, 35% of species will be extinct. Instability, hunger, poverty, conflict, shortage, and diseases, suits, and natural disasters. Nuclear war is possible. It will mean our extinction. Innovation. Single-payer wrecks all medical innovation. Decreased profit reduces investment in R&D. Pit 16. Single-payer everywhere. Suppress medical innovation. Drug prices control. Weaken incentive for pharma to invest in R&D. In the 1970s, push drug development to the U.S. U.S. share rose 57%. MBER causing the cutting prices. U.S. will lead 30-60% fewer R&D projects. Less research means fewer medicines. And drug innovation underpins soft power and medical diplomacy. Marguy 14. Using scientific healthcare resources to create soft power that generate favorable behavior from other nations and partnerships to promote global security, research and development for pharmaceuticals, biotech play a pivotal role. U.S. can use diplomacy and medicine to reach out to healthcare cooperation, on opportunity relationships on a sustainable course and distinction. Login 11. Despite large economic challenges, military expenditures, and new players in the U.S. has an unrivaled ability to confront terrorism, proliferation, financial stability, disease, and tyranny in the U.S. is still an indispensable nation. Soft power is crucial to sustaining this role. Politics. A win in healthcare legitimizes the rest of the GOP agenda, ensures tax reform. Model 17. Failure to repeal Obamacare spelled doom. The rest of Trump's agenda in healthcare may collapse, maybe poison the future for big ticket legislative deals. Unless we can get a big win on this board, I don't know how we can pull the things together. Obamacare put a smooth path for tax reform. Health bill is the linchpin of Trump's entire agenda, and the collapse of WTO, Fowler 16, tax reform, risk trade war, even blowing up the WTO is practically invited retaliatory tariffs and would unravel the entire WTO. Republicans want to include border adjustments, given the size of the U.S. and how much it trades, dwarf any previous fighting threatened WTO's existence. And nuclear war. Hammond 12. Compliance with WTO rules is the most important in the nuclear armed world. The U.S., China, and Russia play dangerous games. Brinkmanship with trade keeps fingers off the button. Nations perceive WTO as an option for dispute resolution. Health. The advantage is logical. If people have a condition that could kill, they would go to the doctor no matter what, regardless of whether or not they have insurance. Insurance doesn't improve health outcomes. Most comprehensive studies, McCarl 10. No one risk tests without going to insurance. Conduct uses a sample more than 600,000 found no significantly elevated risk of death among the uninsured. Healthcare kills. Increasing health insurance causing more healthcare, but made no difference in health status. Physicians. Plan reduces access to lower physician incomes and investment in new tech. Book 9. Because fewer highly talented people will be willing to undergo years of training, patients suffer decreased access to healthcare and longer wait times. Physicians would invest less in advanced medical equipment, would spend less time on each patient. Single payer would be stingy payer. Physicians' outcome will be substantially reduced in countries with single payer. The average income of physicians substantially lower. The immediate effort would be a reduction of supply of access to physicians, thereby impairing access to healthcare. The result will not be a lower incomes, but reduced access and lower quality healthcare for future generations as well. And government healthcare kills doctor-patient relationship. Heist 4. This problem is worsened by increased role of government financing healthcare. Government will demand say how much money is spent. Doctors will answer to masters, patients, the government. Government must necessarily limit where patients can receive, even if patients disagree. The problem arises when those paying the bills increase the government are not the same as those receiving the care. Market insurance allows rational evaluation of cost-effectiveness treatments while preventing the doctor-patient relationship. We do not have a choice whether these decisions will be made by the patients based on their personal priorities or the government bureaucrats. And turns in the app means people die when disease and bioterror outbreaks come. Class 2. The public will not take the pill if it does not trust the doctor's offering. The disease outbreak will require the general population trust and confidence. After bioterror attack, trust could be a fragile asset yet essential. Trust bears significantly on 2 critical assets: effective communication with the public and process for debating ethically complex decisions on disease containment. The direct personal contact is most significant effect on willingness to trust and act on healthcare-related information. And bioterror causes extinction. Sandberg 8. Humanity is threatened by nuclear war. We may face greater risk when synthetic biology pathogens are self-replicating. Allow small action will become exponentially destructive, although most pandemics being engineered pathogens might be capable of human extinction. Plan creates overuse of healthcare, causes ABR, turns case Brownlee 216. There's another side of healthcare: rampant overuse, delivery of necessary care and harming patients, devastating families, and draining the nation's pocketbook. Most conservative estimate more than $200 billion. Overuse pervasive, as many as half of antibiotic prescriptions should not have been written, contribute to antibiotic resistance, as well as high rate of asthma and other chronic illnesses. Structural violence. Extinction outweighs moral obligations. Bach 88. No one with concerned humanity can risk eliminating humanity for justice. Collective death as a state conscience would be irrational and would be beside the point for the end of the world at stake. In extreme cases, we might have to go against even the strictest moral duty because of consequences. And consequences will go to Isaac 2. Unyielding concern with moral goodness undercuts political responsibility, does not ensure achievement in a world of violence, moral purity is often complicit with justice, politics, and message unintended consequences about intentions to pursue good, generates moral absolutism, inhibits the judgment, and undermines political effectiveness. And plan reduces access to lower physician incomes and investment in new techniques that can't solve structural violence with 9. Because if you're highly talented people, be willing to undergo years of training, patients would sell. Isn't this the same card right before?
Oh yeah, don't read that card.
Skip that card. Plan destroys the economy. Single payer would require massive. This one too. Okay. Plan will destroy the economy. Single payer require massive increases. Assumption cost savings are politically absurd and completely denied. Pollock 15. Raise the tax by 8% of GDP. Remove healthcare and public funded budget. Claim that we must reduce healthcare. Reduce spending from 18% to 15% of GDP. Politically impossible. It would be a miracle if we hold spending at 18%. Given an aging population under any financing system, we might probably require substantially greater revenue to prevent healthcare from deeply damaging healthcare budget. And these tax hikes will destroy the economy and innovation. As tax rates get higher, the damage rises dramatically. Jamalka 17. Tax rates dramatically reduce private incentives to integrate and investability to hurt their gross performances. As tax rate rise, their negative impact on growth rate rise dramatically. Growth comes from innovation. Economies populated by Asians differ in their ability as entrepreneurs and innovators. Increase in tax rates and reduces incentives to be an entrepreneur, generates exit from the innovation sector where taxes become high, the growth engine stalls. And nuclear war times at 15, negative trade expectations generate tensions. If leaders anticipate decline, they may refuse to be turned on nuclear arms, change the world economy. Deterrence, protect the Armageddon, unreliably so. Deterrence would lose credibility. Great powers like ammo, cyber war, or conventional war.
How much time do you have left?
Like 3 seconds.
Oh, cool.
Alright, that's time. We need a drink. And then I'm ready for cross-X.
Why is the doctor-patient relationship specifically important?
Because that is what's key to getting people to the doctor. It's not whether or not you have insurance.
In a world where we have cards that say that like the doctor-patient relationship that currently exists is often specifically harmful to women, how does your evidence interact with that?
I mean, sorry, there's another thing that I think is important to bring up, which is that whether or not people have trust in their doctor is a critical question as to, it's relevant to whether or not they will like comply with their treatments, which means that you can't actually solve any of the structural violence and or deaths that are coming from a result of a lack of healthcare, because people like literally will not have the same access to care if you break down doctor-patient trust.
Either way, our evidence says you make it net
what if we're not breaking down doctor-patient trust? What if that doesn't exist in the status quo?
I mean, you could argue that. Our card is from like 14, which indicates that no major changes on the healthcare front since then. So
okay.
That's probably
then we can
not
have
true,
that evidence debate. That's fine. Let's see. I'm just confused where like the disease and bioterror glass 2 card is coming into play.
Yeah. So because people won't go to the doctor because they don't have trust in the doctor or they don't trust what the doctor says. In the case of disease outbreak.
Okay. So how many people would have to stop going to the doctor for disease outbreak?
Anyone has the possibility of becoming patient 0. Also, you make it uniquely likely to have antibiotic resistant.
Okay, just a quick question. So, actually, no, continue. Sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, so you basically cause, because you give people, people go to the doctor unnecessarily, you cause people
to... Okay, why do people not go to the doctor in the status quo?
They don't go to the doctor because, there are many reasons why they don't go to the doctor. They don't trust, I don't know.
Yeah, I think cost is a reasonable reason why people don't go to the doctor. That doesn't guarantee that the healthcare that the plan provides is going to be effective, though.
Let's see,
they have to go to work that day.
We actually have a couple of arguments why, having more access to healthcare is bad.
Okay, why is soft power related to, why is medical diplomacy what's the internal link chain to extinction? I guess I'm confused.
So we're saying that the U.S. is the lead innovator in medical research, and the plan would destroy that. And if you destroy that, then it inhibits our ability to trade with other nations, and thus...
Yeah, a lot of the reason why people want to work with us is because we have a long tradition of public health diplomacy, but we can't have this public health diplomacy if we're not a world leader in medical innovation, which the plan would change.
Okay, on the topicality flow, how do we explode the topic?
NHI, National Health Insurance, is a multi-payer system as well. You just focus very narrowly, you completely eliminate, an entire lit base. That's basically what we said.
Okay.
I'm just reiterating here.
Alright, that's time.
Alright.
Yep.
No, that's cool. Yeah, I'm gonna go here.
I was looking some stuff for you wanted. Other than that, just yeah, it's like 1 in all our stuff to read on the case.
No, what round is it most similar to?
Oh, 2.
2.
Actually, no, it was in the email. Sorry. Yeah, read that. When you do the retreats.
Stopping prep at 7:01.
Okay.
Alright, it's going to be case on top, then T, federalism, counterplan, medical innovation, and then the 2 politics scenarios in the order of ag and trade.
Okay, I'm gonna need all of that one more time. I'm sorry.
Sure, I need to put my own papers in order. So it's going to be case on top.
Is it health then structural violence later?
Yes, it's gonna be. We're gonna be heading down the flow. I'm gonna have an overview for our stuff on case, and then I'm gonna go to your stuff on case.
Sure.
And then we're going to do T.
Okay.
Oh my god, I have to put my notes in order as well. I'm so sorry. Federalism, counterplan, and then medical innovation, and 2 politics dissents. Okay.
Sorry, what's the order of the politics dissents?
The politics dissent is going to be the ag scenario, and then the
trade
scenario.
Cool.
And the cards should be in that order as well. I'm pretty sure my headers are in that order.
Alright, I gotta pull the doc and then we're good.
Awesome. And Marco, if you could just pass this to me.
Yep.
Okay. Good to start?
Nope, not set up yet, sorry.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry, I have a ton of docs in.
Okay.
Okay, where is this? Oh, I got it. Alright, we're good.
Alright. Okay. So first on case, our first debater to tell someone dies every 12 minutes due to lack of healthcare in the U.S. That's 10 people just in this debate round. That's so scary. Clark and Gaffney explain why our specific plan solves for death. Insurance reduces death. Single payer is the most efficient expansion of insurance. And our second advantage is structural violence. Medical deserts are a major cause of lack of healthcare for disadvantaged populations. That's Collins. Single payer solves for medical deserts. That's Gaffney. Kovetsky explains why this is important for people of color in the U.S. who receive worse medical service than whites. This is also important for disabled populations who are underserved by the current medical services. That's Renoni Wilhelmer and Himmelstein explain why this is a problem for women and other feminized populations who are forced to pay more for healthcare in the marketplace. Malhotra explains why single payer is a specifically good starting point for decommodifying and resisting oppression. Our O'Rourke cards, our O'Rourke solvency cards talk about how we have a moral obligation in this round to address specific inequities, and that is the moral obligation of the judge to endorse a plan that is investigating structural violence and the inequities of the status quo. And doctors won't see a massive decrease in salaries under single payer, and they would still have incentives to provide the best care well under 2003. All patients would be insured in a uniform fee schedule. Physicians would work harder to make more blinkers supply, saving each practitioner $1,000 annually, and office expense based on experience and a little experience on the physician's average incomes. This is also empirically disproven. Doctors exist in other countries, and doctors wouldn't leave. Also, there's no bioterrorists. Seven distinct technical barriers to the impact. National Journal 2005. Experts oversimplify the technical challenges obtaining proper equipment, appropriate state of pathogens, storing and handling greater quantity, processing the toughest challenges, weaponization, aerosolization is a serious hurdle. Also on all of the arguments about how people won't go to the doctor because they're sick. Our argument isn't just that people won't go to the doctor that they're sick, it's that they don't have access to doctors, that they'll die in the ambulance because they're medical deserts and they won't be able to go to the doctor, or that they're scared of creating a child being a burden for their families, so they just won't go to the doctor until the Julius. This shows how out of touch they are with the realities of medical service in medical service in the U.S. Also on their overuse thing, on their overuse advantage. This is another advantage that really only benefits the people who are most advantaged right now. Antibiotic resistance is coming anyway, and we'll have more on that. In a few seconds. Also this stuff about primary care double turns all of their stuff about BioTower and patient trust, because if people are going to go to the doctor whenever they feel threatened, then it's not really going to matter who's actually paying for the doctor. And on TV, meet single payers, an insurance scheme that covers all people in the nation that is literally national health care, and counter-trump single payers, national health insurance, PNH, 2016 single payer national health insurance, all residents of the U.S. will be covered from medically necessary services funded by savings from replacing multiple insurances, payers, and taxes based on ability to pay. They overlearned if every debate was just the military, we would cover all possible arguments the first tournament of the season. This leads to bad debate education because we never learn anything new or research. No impact empirically is proven that people quit debate and vote on reasonability. We are obviously a reasonable thing that you should have expected single payer apps. And on federalism distorts health high costs under coverage collapse. 2013. Managed care has been recognized as essential to controlling costs of the ACA. The effectiveness is determined by poor design state regulations. The coverage gap is filled by government programs only to strain our federal system budgets. The bloated costs for American health accommodators, unless reformers acknowledge trouble screens where the states become more comfortable with federal preemption of healthcare regulations, which constrains costly procedures have been prohibited by the governments. Instead of budgeting subsidized mental health, states have been limited access to healthcare. The net effect of the federal state division of labor has been undermined by managed care, allowing states to intrude into the marketplace is costly, and healthcare federalism is parallel, and federalism is resilient. DA is no big. Rodriguez 14. The value of the system common to all of its participants is the framework it creates for the ongoing negotiation of disagreements. Federalism constitutes framework for national integration. It creates a multiplicity of institutions with lawmaking power through which to develop national consensus while establishing a system that allows for expression of disagreement. The negotiations require federalism to structure our national debates within the existing legal constraints. State and local actors will have room to maneuver, and the government considerable discussion to refrain from taking preemptive action. The relationship overlapping political communities are interlocked in zero-sum competition, but never bound by the fixed rules of engagement. Precisely what makes federalism productive regardless of perspective. And federalism does not work to self-confidence. Gary, 1994, federalism has a poor track record as a conflict regulating device. Federal failures have occurred because minorities continue to be outnumbered, resulting in frustration to provide considerable incentives to attempted secession, and only keep the legislation linked states have the power over key policy questions during the rulemaking period, which yields due to 2013. Politics continues in the rulemaking phase. The importance of the regulations developed by imagining legislation. Rulemaking has often been neglected in the study of public policy. Federal rulemaking with input from the states in the case of health insurance. Agencies will define operational methods these decisions are made. Interest groups have another chance to advance policies. These organizations would influence critical policy decision studying. Rulemaking is essential to understanding federalism and the locus of power. And on the counterplan, every card we just read is a unique descent to the solvency of the counterplan. States in particular cannot solve for federalism and turn through the plan and have the states implement. This is normal means. This is exactly how the ACA was implemented. And on the medical innovation, just had no impact economic decline. Dresner 2011. Despite the worst economic global crisis, public attitudes have not changed all that much. Multilateral econ institutions are more robust now. WTO complaint IMF string the G20's reassurance communication can prevent. Whereas the world has a hell of a lot more than democratic governments now. We're also going to cross-apply this to all of their econ arguments on the case, well, if you don't want to draw that over now, we'll talk about it in future speeches. And they and Big Pharma say that price setting kills innovation, but the truth is prices far exceed R&D. Direct price reduction necessary. Pharma letter 2017. An examination of the drug companies compared revenues and found that the U.S. pays much more for drugs than other countries. The difference far exceeds R&D. The pharma claims that pricing levels are required to fund innovation, and that list price medicines sold by companies in the U.S. exceeded that quota to other countries by an average of 41%. While the pricing difference generated $106 billion, nobody this much percentage of drug discovery and development. Companies that most spend only $76 billion, about 60% of the excess cost on global R&D. U.S. premium to a level where it matches global R&D expenditures across 50 companies would have saved patients, businesses, and taxpayers around $40 billion. And politics uniqueness to overwhelm blame Trump popularity is so low impossible to recover. RE 2017 multiple polls show Trump's approval dropped to 36%, sacking of Comey heightened fears. According to Power, professor of international politics, Darren Sproul, Trump's popularity comes after his decision to pull out of the Paris Climate Accord. There is the continuing investigation of Russian meddling in the U.S. elections and turned single-payer unpopular perceived tax burden and magic. 2017, the single-payer model faces an uphill battle. The unpopularity of tax increases of any kind of robust business interests have long hampered implementation. And actually skip the card, I'll come back to it later. And no more impact food shortages don't escalate change 2011. Food prices increases have been factors in the unrest sweeping North America and North Africa and the Middle East. This is not the first time in human history that food shortages look like they would be the motor of violent geopolitical change. Yet amazing economic advantages, especially Berlog's green revolution in the middle of the 20th century, have consistently proved that when pessimists wrong. It's important to remember the power of human innovation and the efficiency of free markets. And turn food into overproduced in the status quo causes environmental damage and hurts water supplies. Do follow 2016, the National Resource Defense Council came out with a shocking statistic that 40% of the U.S. food supplies is wasted. Overproducing food also disrupts world markets as well as causes immense environmental damage to food and water supplies. And all signs actually skip that card too. And turn the argument is infinitely regressive and justifies doing absolutely nothing and never advocating for policy on the off chance that the policy will be unpopular when lead to some kind of disaster in the far future. This re-entrenches current structures of power and always forces us to be content with all of the problems of the status quo. And no internal link immigration laws aren't the main cause of loss of farm workers. Mexico is getting richer. Bloomberg 2013. Looser immigration laws may not be able to keep our food cheap forever. Suggest that U.S. could well face a shortage. Mexico is getting richer. No country gets richer. Pool of rural agricultural labor shrinks. Alternatively, U.S. farmers could continue to invest in new labor-saving technologies. And on the politics, trade is that no trade wars pledged 2016. Economists summarize why trade wars are mythical. They don't happen. You won't find any historical examples. Don't respond to that with that old card about Smoot-Hawley tariff of 1930 doesn't stand up. Actual economic historians for freedom and all the right to criminal left have documented the depression causes monetary stock market bubble collapse was a too small change. Smooth too small change. Here does the myth of spirals of retaliation by foreign nations stand up. According to the 1931 Convention against American commerce, is very slight trade wars are invented bogeyman to push down free trade, but no nation can ever gain from having one. Think about that for a minute. And for ongoing WTO violations, Tom Peter said, Financial Review 16. Policymakers worry about the new methods countries are using to protect their industries. World Trade has experienced a wave of protectionism. Governments took more than 400 discriminatory actions against foreign competitors. Compared with 2009, 4 times as many protectionist measures were introduced. Concerns have been amplified with global trade this year expected to grow more slowly than countries are turning turning to buy American provisions. In the U.S., these have exploded in the crisis and require governments to prefer domestic products and steel for shoes for the military. This type of protectionism we are seeing is now more insidious than ever. And new checks solve, and back on case, sorry about this. No check solves antibiotic resistance. When bacteria develop resistance to antibiotics and solutions to find new ones that they've got no defenses against. The majority of antibiotics come from 1% of bacteria. We expect to find thousands more. Rather than panicking, we need to focus on supporting scientists and developing technologies. And we talk about how our plan does that because we help solve for the medical innovation. Just that we also remove the profit incentives that are necessarily tied to There's another 1 or 2 cards. Oh, awesome. Okay, and disease impacts would be mitigated. USAID has a rapid detection and response March 2017 predict program designed to rapidly detect and emerging pathogens funded by USAID has helped discover nearly 1,000 new viruses in animals and humans. Outbreaks that are like fires. If you're able to understand where likely it is occurring. Is occurring and detect them early on, you can shift the impact, and I don't know how to work your computer. Shit. Okay, I'm gonna leave that there because I can't understand what that card is because I don't know how to work computers. Okay, so you can cross apply a lot of arguments from our first politics flow onto the second politics flow. First of all, uniqueness overwhelms blank. Also, the perceived tax burden is always going to be high. This never actually causes any kind of trade war. And you can also cross apply some of our arguments about the unpopularity onto the counterplan flow. And those are going to be
I'm just going to send those cards in the body of an email if that's okay. That's the antibiotic resistance and the disease cards.
Okay, open for cross-ex.
That's your job.
All right. How is the how do you do the perm on the counter plan? Because like federalism and the national government are incompatible.
Well, no. I mean, I disagree. Federalism is the U.S. government is part of federalism. Like federalism is the system of the combination of a bunch of different levels of government. So, I just disagree with the premise of your question.
So for your on the PTX, you say that Trump's popularity is so low it's impossible to recover. Our evidence talks about Congress. So how does anything apply there?
How does anything apply there?
Yeah, because you just focus on Trump.
Yeah, so the Republicans are super unpopular. Also, we think that Trump's popularity becomes important for the midterm election. Like, he is the main face of their party right now, and like it or not, they're still supporting
about the Republicans in Congress. Or like, there's two different, you know.
I mean, I'm explaining those warrants to you now. If you want us to read more cards on it, like, this is what I study.
It's true.
Explain the warrants then.
Explain the warrants?
Yeah.
Trump's popularity is uniquely tied to the Republicans' popularity, especially in this political climate. When politicians in Congress have refused to abandon him and continue to support his agenda, especially because you have this argument about how Trump gets credit for the single payer plan. So you're already basing this on Trump. You're already basing your argument on Trump perception.
On the trade. You mentioned that 400 ongoing WTO violations from the DISAD. Like, do they outweigh, like, individually, like, our counterplan, our DA?
I don't think I understand your question.
So, like, there are 400 small violations, I assume, correct?
I mean, I don't think so. They're talking about...
well, which ones are big enough that would trigger
Well, unfortunately, this card is not a laundry list of 400 things, because I only had 9 minutes. It talks about, like... We talked about how products prefer domestic steel, domestic shoe production. We think that these are all really important types of production that are still happening in the status quo. All of these different types of protectionism are happening. They said 4 times as many protectionist measures are being introduced. If protectionism is increasing, we don't see how your impact is unique in any way.
Quick question: anyone timing this cross-ex?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. How much do we have left?
45 seconds.
Cool.
All right.
How's your McGarry and O'Leary card clash with our evidence that says that federalism has worked? Specifically, like ours is way more recent. So
okay. We think our McGarry and O'Leary card is specific to marginalized populations and minorities, which is a lot of what the focus of the app is, and we think that we should focus this. We should center this round on
minorities affected by climate change.
Oppressed.
Yes or no?
Sure.
Okay. Explain the Pope 13 card.
You're gonna have to point that out to me. I'm sorry. This is a
Topic federalism flow.
Sure. The Pope 2013 card says that states are uniquely bad at implementing healthcare, and that I think.
Yeah. So I just have one question. Did you read this? The Smith and Hellman card on the midterms DA. This is prep, by the way. Oh, sorry. Did you read the Smith and Hellman card that the ag industry is collapsing now?
No.
Okay, cool. And did you read the Plumer 13 card about immigration laws? Mexico immigration laws aren't the main cause of...
Yes, I did.
Okay, cool.
So I had 6:57 left. Does that sound right?
I don't know. I just started prep. What?
Oh, okay. No, I did that wrong then. I accidentally prepped ours under half and yours under. Okay, so then it's 9. Yeah, you're good. 9:50. Yeah, okay, we're good. Never mind. Question.
532 left.
I'm sorry, what's the order?
What?
Order.
Oh, I haven't given it yet.
Oh, sorry, I thought I
Give me 1 second.
I'm like, so am I wrong?
Alright, order is going to be T, states, and then midterms. Oh, I did not do that either.
Is the states the decider to count?
The counterpoint. Oh, actually, hold up. That order was a complete lie. T, innovation, the trade politics DA, that was the last one in the 1NC, the federalism DA, then states, then midterms. And I will send all of this stuff out.
Say that again.
T, the innovation DA, the trade politics DA,
Okay.
and then the federalism DA,
Okay.
and then states, then midterms.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Wait, so all of the octaves position?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're all in there somewhere.
Okay. I was like, I'm running out of papers.
Kicking out of some of these, so
No, it's good.
it's not as big of a 2NC as it sounds.
Okay.
I feel like I did that.
You know. You know, we did say that.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
Oh shoot.
Alright, did everyone get it?
I got this, like, my laptop really quick.
Is everyone good? Topicality. National health insurance means that the state requires residents to take out private health insurance in a multi-payer system. The plan violates because it mandates a single-payer system. We solve their education offense because the single-payer counterplan solves all their offense without forcing anything to cut out DAs and counterplans. Now, the counter-interpretation they made, there's a double bind too. The only card that they read that is close to a counter-interpretation is a card saying that single-payer is, and it's either three ways this could play out. A, either as a we meet that doesn't apply and I did that work above, or single-payer is the only topical aspect which leads to stale debates via over limiting, which is an argument that they made in the 2AC, or they have no counter-interpretation which exposes limits. I'll unpack that here. Now, this is the counter-interpretation. This had no counter-interpretation is net worse because they allow tons of absolute free market policies and other stuff which explodes the topic. Our interpretation allows only a handful of apps like a public option or multi-payer systems like in Germany, Japan, or France. Our interpretation is better for limits. That is critical because it sets the base for all prep and ground on the topic. Smaller topics allow for better research and more in-depth debates. Now, even if it is one app, precision has to be the guiding standard for both app and predictability because the topic has barely started. We need this to get the best literature and in-depth debates. Otherwise, there's no question about the true meaning of national health insurance. They say app flexibility. There are enough apps under our vision of the topic, like public option, multi-payer, or other country systems that allow competition. Now, this is an answer to their over-limiting stuff. Also, limits are good because they're key to in-depth debate and a well-prepared opponent. And it creates clash and vertical innovation, which is depth instead of breadth, which is better for education. Now, also, they say that there is no impact to topicality anyway. You should. We did not make an abuse claim. You should use convenient interpretations here. If we prove that their version of debate leads to less educational debates because of a lack of limits, then that is a sufficient reason. That is a sufficient reason to vote negative. Which I did some of that work above. They say reasonability. That's impact turned by our precision standard because it's not grounded in any coherent theory of cost-benefit analysis. Also, it makes no sense because the topic has barely started. There's no cogent of the topic, and reasonability is arbitrary. And that works for predictability early in the year. Now they say this deferral DA. There's a topical version of the app that solves all of this. There's the public option solves structural violence because it leads to universal healthcare, which solves their disad, but which means that this is not germane to our topicality violation. Now, I'm going to kick out of a few things. The innovation DA will concede the plan does not harm innovation, not going for this. The trade politics DA will concede that the DA is non-intrinsic, it doesn't apply, and the federalism DA we will concede the federalism is resilient. The state's counterplan, it solves all of the AF, results in the exact same coverage, uniform implementation as the filter you should put all their solvency deficits through because it overcomes the administrative barriers that their evidence talks about. States have the authority to act on healthcare, which is the Emmanuel card. You should use sufficiency framing because they have no solvency deficits to the counterplan in the 2AC, which is critical here now. They say permutation do both. It fails because it links to politics because Trump and Congress could still take credit for the plan, but it also causes unnecessary administrative overlap and waste. It's their burden to prove how this functions. What does a world look like where both the states and the federal government have a single-payer system? Obviously, that doesn't make any sense. Now, Trump and the GOP Congress won't be able to take credit for the plan. It would be a byproduct of state legislators. Democrats would still be able to campaign on. The GOP has tried to take away your health care, and the last argument which proves that we have politics as a net benefit. The last argument they made was that it's not that the counterplan is normal means. It is obviously not normal means. The plan is federal intervention in education policy, even in healthcare policy, even if that is where even if the states because like even if states are implementing in the status quo, the plan like changes that calculus. It means that the states are no longer have the authority over this thing. It removes the states' rights to say no. 850 the federal government has shown deference to states with regard to healthcare licensing for various adjustments to match local services. Political distance states are generally not massive established programs. The federal government office of Highways implementation. National government merely provides funding level and level by the states under restrictive states provided with the options of expanding the existing Medicaid programs. A separate just relying on a combination of the two. The midterms dissent. Ag collapse causes the world with 3 consensus of think tanks agree it's the most likely trigger for global nuclear war, inflames existing complexes, countries invade secure resources. That's FDI outweighs on time frame. The GOP immediately translates the one into immigration restrictions, which destroys U.S. agriculture and spikes food prices and collapses supply faster than the Af because they depend on logical changes to healthcare, economics. Now, no impact defense also it turns the Af because it turns structural violence. Trump's immigration agenda is an ongoing war on immigrants that manifests itself in profound racial violence and empowers white supremacist ideology. Resistance should be our top priority. In 17, Trump's immigration agenda stands on draconian policy. Immigration policy represent wasting services, xenophobic practices, such as anti-Mexicanism, and Islamophobic. These policies murder white native philosophy, harking back to the more oppressive periods of U.S. history. While Johnson initiated the war on poverty, Nixon invented the war on drugs, Trump has championed the war on immigrants. Trump's policies include demonizing Mexican immigrants and separating their children from their parents. During these times, it's imperative, although those of us who lose justice dignity for all African humane and just policies for those on the margins. Now, the uniqueness debate, the GOP will win big in the Senate in 2018. The election map structurally ensures that it's only a question of how much. Right now, the Democrats have Trump's unpopularity on their side, which means that they'll hang on to the filibuster, which is conflict from 824. But the best modeling predicts the GOP will be just short of 60, the threshold for Lincoln's low Ostermeyer in 17. Looking properly, the data, smart politics, and 900% election found the party of the sitting president and nearly half the U.S. Senate contest, winning 45% of seats, would and the GOP 7 seats to a new filibuster proof 59. The first argument they made was that uniqueness overwhelms the link. This evidence that they read on this question is trash. It doesn't apply to the midterms. The map and the number of Democrats being re-elected means that our dissent is only a question of how many red state Dems the GOP can flip. These are the people who like Trump but are frustrated by a lack of progress on the agenda. Now, Trump's low approval does not necessarily translate into wins or Dems. Most red states will still be a fight. 1917, the current political alliance here for Republicans. So does this mean all vote on the Democratic incumbents are going to win? Not really. There are a few reasons because looking at the data past measures says opposition Senate will only to see the presidential level is going to increasingly predicted. The Senate results in current political obviously the strong Republican maybe too much for one of these incumbents to overcome. It will be close. Trump's approval is still very high in most 2018 election states. Smith 17, Trump's numbers of face maybe ignore something that beneath the surface of approval rate includes California and New York. Take those places out. They're still very, very popular in states. So we're going to be competing against Trump is still popular in states where Republicans will be investing heavily during the next cycle. Their evidence has a warning about Russia, but that doesn't apply because it doesn't translate to Dem votes. Healthcare is notably more important for voters. Cooper in 17, Trump Russia's popularity cable news doesn't mean a place to the rest of the country. Democrats see Rochester taking 50% of voters are concerned. 73% said they worry about investigation, preventing comments and tackling issues more vital. The healthcare fair means the party's best hoping going in 2018. While surveys showing the GOP's top is showing concern of voters Dems have the opportunity to galvanize Americans. So I'm going to group the two cards on the link debate here. The single payer is a massive win for Trump. It eliminates the Democrats' moral high ground in healthcare and electrifies Trump's base of poor voters. Overwhelming support of 60% of the population. The plan, the president's spin game in the history of supporting liberal healthcare nullifies any risk of a link turn, which is the Blake evidence. Their evidence is from before GOP healthcare imploded, which means that even if single payer was unpopular, that is popular now. Uniquely, it gives the GOP crucial leverage over Democrats' interests. Republicans hold on to white working class voters. Buckley in 17, looking strategy minds of the people that Republicans blew healthcare from Trump. Thomas McClellan did no one sure this was slated to universal healthcare. This would reach across the aisle to Democrats who support this. People who elected Trump 2016, they were very ideologues of people who feared they boost jobs. Challenge Democrats offering what they've always said they want to become the jobs of healthcare presidents. There, evidence says that the people don't like single payer because it costs a bunch in taxes, but that doesn't apply because their evidence is based on outdated assumptions. since Franken 7-7, having to pay taxes and mandate the electorate as long as you come to terms most people understand the entire system caused the payments were voluntary. The AC was adopted as the electric police single payer approach would not be a political achievement in 2009. Single payer now was significantly higher support. This is actually strongly favored voters. Medicaid cuts new ground. It's time to go further. Tides are turning. Single payer would be a win for the party and popular with the Republican base. Maker in 17 GOP health politics. Speculating here does the GOP health movement is massively unpopular. Trump's office is free on Australia and even the GOP. This is where the votes are. Trump's with the Senate, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security is big part of appeal in the primary single payers, but with conservative principles. They read impact. This Chang 15 card, Chang 11 card. He's wrong. Their evidence says it's too. Their evidence says it's complex. That there's not enough empirical data, but we have the best studies that disprove this. Concludes food insecurity is principal cause of war. Goes in 16 areas with more access, less ability, food availability, experience more conflict on the inequality, and effective food security conflict in how many of the high premiums that armed actors face the security be supposed to give food security trends are correct. We'll see an increase in conflict. All models show definitely significant changeable. Plus 92% of the probability common demand side food insecurity will directly seek out and fight over existing conflict reasons. The lower availability might arise from the principal outcome of food insecurity. The relationship to food insecurity conflict over possible numerous alternative specs and implied and independent effect of food insecurity should be conflict dynamics and conflict risks successfully considered alongside the current climate acting conditions. Countries should see an increase in worldwide in the coming years. They have this overproduction turn. There is no impact to this. Even if food is wasted, that doesn't answer the claim that U.S. ag exports are key to global security because we are producing an absolute ton of food, most of which goes to developing countries, which is the only thing stopping food wars from happening. They say the DA is infinitely aggressive and justifies doing nothing. The turns case arguments disprove this because it means that we are a case turned to the app. This is a serious consequence that they shouldn't just ignore, but there will be more framings on our arcs on consequentialism in the 1 and R. Now, they say immigration laws are not the cause of farm decline. Again, there's evidence in 2013. It is obviously about the SQO, but not even the SQO, because like a couple of years ago, they have conceded, it does not assume new future immigration restrictions, which would be much worse than the ones in the status quo, because we will literally deport the entire immigrant labor force now independently, maintaining control of the filibusters, key to strike Trump's agenda. Pro Cop 17, I think Trump alluded to what he wants to do is a cast of Senate, the whole possession to resist Trump's aids, which tries to difficult over party president controversial legislation, the vast majority of bills require 60 votes to beat a filibuster. The most immediate priorities for left politics should be checking Trump. His regime threatens the lives of millions in Bolton's white supremacist Queen Moran. 16 Trump's election has potential to be the most catastrophic and modern American political history, implications of economy, peace, and welfare, millions of stagnant debt, especially for the most vulnerable immigrants, Muslims, the poor who need health insurance protection, gun violence victims, self-abuse. Trump's victory would do more than inflict harm to millions to legitimate the Western place, the white supremacists, and the misogynists. We must be sustainable to give up and taking non-political activity close our eyes. Hope this end will stop that way here in the White House. We can't give up politics defines real life. No one can escape climate change. Market at climate change. Okay, so I read everything except for the one card on the state's counterplan, the angle card, and then the two cards at the bottom of the link wall, which were Trendon, Byler, and Kissling.
Okay. So you read the Prokop and Creamer?
Mm.
Okay, cool. Alright. Okay, can you just point out your warrant for the food goes to developing countries?
Yeah, that was the 1NC piece of Edmark evidence, which you conceded in the 2AC.
Edmark. Alright, awesome, thank you. Okay. Can you explain why the Libertarian Party exists if people don't care about taxes?
I mean, okay, obviously some people care about taxes, but the frank evidence indicates that the vast majority of voters have accepted the fact that they need to pay taxes on some things. This evidence is specific to why people will not worry about single payer. It says that single payer now enjoys significantly higher support than it did in 2009, and it's actually strongly favored by voters. We have other pieces of evidence that say 60% of voters support this. These are a lot of the voters who are kind of in the middle and who want to see the GOP actually do something on healthcare. Okay. So these are potential votors for the GOP in the Senate elections.
Now than in 2009, why have Democrats lost all of these elections when they get credit for the ACA?
Because the ACA is not single payer, and Democrats don't have single payer on their platform.
They only like single payer, but they only like single payer, but they don't like any other kind of.
No, I mean, so our evidence indicates that if the Republicans were to just out of the blue enact a single payer program, it would actually be pretty popular. That's the only thing that we need to win the risk of this link.
Okay, but you don't have to prove that any other healthcare plan is popular?
I mean...
So, you think single payer is, unique and weird?
Yeah, I mean, okay. we read a ton of specific evidence that indicates that, single payer is literally what the GOP needs to do to save the party. That's also, our Madar card and our Buckley card.
Okay, thank you. Alright,
Yeah, and obviously, saving the party is bad because Republicans are bad.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll take that. Okay.
It's true.
Okay. 2NC, turn structural violence. Okay. okay, if immigration problems are happening in the status quo, how do we make it uniquely worse?
Well, because the Diaz card indicates that Trump has only like scratched the surface with his immigration policy, and he has the ability to pass legislation that would lead to many, many more people getting deported, which obviously is much, much more like racist violence.
Okay.
The only thing that is stopping Trump from doing these mass deportations is the fact that the GOP only has 52 seats in the Senate. If they had 60 seats in the Senate, because the plan would give them those votes, then like they would be able to like enact like absolutely awful deportation policies.
Okay. Okay.
3 seconds.
3 seconds. Okay.
Order. Case.
I'll find stuff.
I should send this stuff over.
That's a good thing to do.
Yeah. I am doing healthcare advantage and then the structural violence advantage.
Are you sending cards over?
I just did.
Awesome.
Alright, cool. Everyone ready?
Oh, sorry, I need to get the doc.
Alright, cool.
Wait, is it just that one card?
What? No, there's more.
5. There's 5.
Oh, okay, never mind. I have to get the doc then. I'm sorry, this will take 1 second. Sorry, my Wi-Fi is like screwed up. Okay, I got it.
Alright. Actually, I won't read the top econ cards, just looking at them again. So,
clarity.
So yeah, I'll read Schofield and McCardle.
Okay.
So yeah. Everyone ready?
Just the last 2?
Yeah, just check something. Sorry. Healthcare and then structural violence. Everyone ready? Alright. Framing is no substitute debate. Make them actually debate our impacts and prove that they're improbable. Otherwise, you default to utilitarianism because it's subjective standard to determine ethics in a time-pressed situation like debate. None of their authors assume global human extinction doing risk calculus, so you give us no substantial weight. So you give us substantial weight. Existential threats obviously outweigh because people don't get a choice means all of their authors flow neg. Their evidence doesn't assume debate. There's no user framing because we evaluate the probability in the link chain first, and if it's not probable, we throw it away. We throw it out anyway. It means you have to start on the evaluation of this ad, not the framing. Senbach 80. The most just action is to avoid risks of eliminating humanity's consequences of the impact are high enough. We have to go against every moral order in order to ensure survival because the extinction affects everybody indiscriminately. That's Bach. Prefer this evidence because it's context of ethics and ontological decision making. Extend Isaac 2, their refusal to weigh consequences and moral tunnel vision, evaluating only one's intentions, no standard to base political action. It means we ignore our actions, actually cause injustice. Their framework reproduces the same injustices they criticize, just end up doing nothing in the face of real problems. Also extend the econ stuff that I did in the 1 and see that those impacts apply to the structural violence DA because when the economy falls, poor and marginalized bodies are the ones who are hurt the most. So as a result, your plan decks the economy because it causes tax revenues to go up. That was one of our cards, and then as a result, by doing that, that causes people to go get out of jobs, and that is usually poor people, and that is the biggest barrier to people to equality right now. Also, onto the line by line. You say that you don't see a decrease in salary. We say yes, you decrease salary. We have evidence from countries that have single payer. Your evidence does not account those undergoing training that are on fixed incomes, which is specifically why people leave the field under single payer. Our evidence talks about that and talks about people leaving. Your evidence does not even dispute that claim. That's our book evidence. So you say no bioterrorism risk. We say yes, bioterrorism, and the risk of bioterrorism is high now. Groups have capability and motivation. Show field 17. Individual nation states have carried out large amounts of research and design work on biochemical weapons. Much of the knowledge and equipment required to develop biochemical weapons is within the average reach of a PhD student. The advent of home molecular biology laboratories not far off as the infrastructure of molecular biology is becoming less less expensive every day. We do not have effective means in interdicting a biological attack as a human population has exploded, found itself increasingly vulnerable to mass causality, biological attack, terror attacks. This offers access to a large number of vulnerable people to radicalize and carry a number of attacks and confounds law enforcement by crossing national boundaries. Once released, communicable pathogens are released not only on a single country but to the entire global. Report in October 2015 conducted that the U.S. is far more vulnerable to bioterrorism attacks by funding billions of dollars research into bioterrorism. It inadvertently proliferate dangerous knowledge, potentially increase the risk of knowledge used by adversaries. Terrorists are more motivated than ever to make use of weapons of mass destruction. Toxins are lethal at 1 part per trillion. Extremists have potential access to knowledge, technology, and raw materials required to perpetrate mass causality biological attack. World can become a plague's playground. And so also extend, antibiotic resistance is not unique now. You make antibiotic resistance worse. Conservative estimate for antibiotics wasted is now $200 billion. With people without access to healthcare, that will be way more, and way more antibiotics will be unleashed throughout the population, and as a result, you will create antibiotic resistance. So anyone has the opportunity to become patient zero, and so going with the card about patient trust, that you destroy patient trust because doctors will not answer to their patients anymore. They will answer to the government and will have to ration care, and also cross-apply that with our book card that says that because fewer doctors will be in the field, and as a result they will ration field, that will decrease patient trust more, and as a result, so you will you will just like make everyone more vulnerable because you decrease healthcare. People won't go to the doctor.
Yeah, so that also inhibits their ability to like solve for deaths from lack of insurance. Yeah,
that inhibits your ability to solve for deaths of lack of insurance. Yes, you do reduce access to healthcare. The evidence on the cross-apply the evidence on the book card, you will decrease doctor access, which will cause decreased healthcare and ration healthcare. And also restricting animal testing hurts research and development.
Don't make that argument. Can you read these cards?
Okay. Alright, back to the case. War causes structural violence. Going C1 onto the structural violence law. Efforts to change the system must overcome dilemmas. One believes that sexism contributes to war. One can work for gender justice in order to pursue peace. Rests on the assumption that injustice causes war. Causality runs strongly the other way. War is not a product of capitalism. War is fueled. Injustice, if you want justice, work for peace. Causality does not run just upward. It runs downward too. Emphasis on injustice seems to be empirically inadequate. And negative peace process is prerequisite to solving structural violence. Scene 8. Peace is mindful of the overriding need for at least a modicum of civil order. Of other worthy goals, including justice, are to be worked towards in all places. War plays a central role in maintaining a national, thereby effective challenges. War can be destroyed in order of force for injustice. Peace is a precious, fragile achievement. Imagine the stringing together of empty banalities. The world is just be one fat chance. I don't know what gets from anarchy to perpetual peace. War can never be abolished, so we must limit ethically and politically. And high magnitude, low probability effects. First, the mass check aggregate probability meets your framework scientific uncertainty. Posture 13. Essential risk signs of premature extinction. Although difficult to test probability, there are reasons opposed to such risks. Significant extreme magnitude of values take even small probability can high practically significant our species introducing new threats considerations. Significant essential scenarios bears the bulk scenarios. We cannot assign precise probabilities, but that does not imply that the risk is negligible. The uncertainty and error proneness of our first order assessments of risk, something we just factor. This dominates low probability, high consequence risks.
Yep. send out the extra cards that we did.
Thank you. Thanks.
Uh-oh, I only said that. Send them to Anthony.
I could forward it over.
Yeah, do that. No, I mean, I have stuff on other rounds.
Yeah, starting from sorry. Yeah. At 123. 1, 2, 3. Look at that. Starting on case, then on 2. Let's see where am I going with this. This will be fun. Case. then topicality, then the counterplanned states, and then the midterms disadvantage.
I understand it's pretty muddled at this point, but do you have an order on the case debate?
On the case debate, that's a good question. I'm going to start with probably a very brief overview at the top, and honestly down the flow. So I guess in order of
I'll
health and then structural violence. I mean,
sure, I'll follow it.
I appreciate it. So going down the flow on the case, they basically our impacts have been more or less conceded in a lot of ways. We talk about how in C309 how lack of insurance kills one person every 12 minutes, and how the single player specifically solves 4 death, the Scavney of 16. They really never interact with our whole discussion on medical deserts and how this is presented by the profit motive, and how we solve for those medical deserts, and racial disparities and health outcomes are basically they start in the process of lack of access. Not like once you get that access, the racial disparities fall off a great amount. The biggest two big things they miss here on the ethics of healthcare, on the PEGS 15 card, how we're talking about the decommodification of society and how this is a necessary independent impact, how we're talking about how this decommodification of society can lead to a lot of good things, and that's more in the context of our framing evidence. They never at once ever address how certain people in the status quo cannot access healthcare. Like women in the status quo are having trouble accessing healthcare. Disabled populations in the status quo are having trouble accessing healthcare. And these are all of our important links that we think are valuable and worth talking about. The single player, so those were our Brown evidence, our one-handler and Himmelstein, and single player vital key step in decommodification of society, and the potential to challenge state power, and the material benefit is true. So I guess down the flow, they drop our second wool-handler evidence. They talk about how our wood handler evidence talks about how they concede that medical deserts analysis. Some people can't go to the doctor even if they die. Like they might die in the MS. People can't go to the doctor not because they don't want to, or if they do. And then I guess on the cards they read down the flow, I'm really disorganized right now. The Schoenfield 17 cards doesn't look at the warrants of the Schoenfield 17 card doesn't look at the warrants of our bioterrorism National Journal card, which talks about the aerosolization of bioterror weapons and how that necessarily won't let them get solved. Basically, will not lead to the bioterrorism that Schoenfield says. It says that there's no structural impact. There's no structural barriers to that bioterrorism impact, but we're saying that our cards specifically give you examples of how these structures exist. And they talk the basic thesis is that decreasing patient trust. They ignore how that's non-unique in the status quo. Patient trust is very low right now. When women cannot trust the advice their medical providers give them, when ordinary people can't trust the advice their medical providers give them because they are being motivated by big pharma, they are motivated by the profit motive. Only we are breaking down the profit motive, and therefore we are actually increasing that trust when someone knows that they're not doing something, they're not giving you an unnecessary procedure just because they can make a lot of money off of it. We're actually, so that we're going to turn that argument and onto the basically the internal link chain. Their own evidence basically says in terms of solves death, their own evidence says that when people are dying, they're more likely to go out of their way to receive, go out of their way and do things that they might, even if they do have insurance, they don't have insurance. Their own evidence that they talked about in the 2NC talk about how people are more likely to go out of their way and go to the extreme if they're dying, and we're saying that that's going to happen whether or not they trust their provider or not. And basically we're saying that some people in the status quo literally cannot do that. They literally do not have access because of medical deserts, and only we can solve for that. They argue that war is caused by structural violence. Our Malhotra 1AC card is really, really good on this because it talks about the decommodification of society. Oops. So on to T. Pre-round disclosure checks. Basically, they say limits good. Basically, they drop for no impact argument. People are not going to quit debate because of it. Their answers to reasonability aren't great because they basically say that reasonability is arbitrary, but we give them a very clear list of all the disadvantages we can run and how it reasonably isn't. The KF won the NDT. People are invigorated. People are not going to quit debate because these tariffs don't exist, and they really do not give you a convincing impact on T as to why vote on reasonability. And on to the CP states. They say that perms fail. Basically, all of their arguments are based on a certain lack of understanding of the irrationality and unpredictability of politics as it exists today. That's kind of like what my partner was saying with the Trump evidence. Sometimes there's a certain flip-flopping that happens, and there's cross-apply the Rodriguez 14 evidence, which talks about how the disadvantage has no impact. This is actually, we flowed this on the federalism DA, but I think it still has really good warrants, which talks about the relationships in overlapping political communities are neither locked in some zero competition nor bounded by fixed rules of engagement. So basically we're saying that both, the perm is better because It's going to happen in status quo. This is not the sum zero competition that they're portraying it as, and therefore there's really no competition on that front. Under the TA, I just don't have a minute left. Okay, so they say that Trump popularity is important as literally their warrant why the GOP wins in 2018 and they need to deal with all the BS Trump will tweet before now in 2018. That level of volatility at very least checks the probability of their impact. That means with their framing, when they say you need to evaluate probability and impact scenarios first, you prefer the app. Their engine card even concedes that Trump's approval rating has an impact on how the midterms will play out. Their argument from the case flow about how the plan creates tax increases and marginalized people are hurt just the most proves their argument about how the plan is unpopular. If they think they will galvanize Trump's base, they should think again because that will hurt some of the poorest Americans like Trump's base. The Adams-Sizak card also warrants about lobbying from business interests, so even if people like single payer in theory, they'll be fooled by hype like the death panels from the ACA and will still be a loss as a result of advertising and propaganda. Don't let them misrepresent the Chang evidence. It says that technological innovations have helped solve for food shortages, but it also shows that global war is empirically disproven. They never effectively address the Plumar evidence, which says that Mexico getting richer is causing that shortage, and that happens in the status quo. So we have the filibuster-proof majority. The delay in implementation means the workers are moving to Mexico anyway, so the new immigration laws can only encourage a transition that was going to happen anyways. They also assume a level of enforcement that just isn't possible with the resources the government has. We know that the farmers are shielding the workers from the immigration force now and could just exacerbate the problem. At best, they have a very low probability impact here, and you should vote on probability. We know that Trump is unpredictable in the status quo, so you should prefer the probability and the surety of the affirmative. Extend our infinitely regressive argument. They prevented us from implementing this plan. At the end of the day, all you have in the affirmative, any change whatsoever. So, in the biggest impacts we have in this round are the impacts related to the commodification of society and how that relates to certain bodies. How animal testing, for instance, is creating this binary that's creating massively oppressed bodies, and the only way to solve for these impacts is to vote out. These are the biggest impacts in the round.
We have 532 left. Extension. No, just bring it up to me. I'll tell you. Okay. It's like towards the end of this. Okay. States, midterms, the structural violence advantage, and then the health advantage. Everyone good? Cool. State's not going for it. We can see the permutation is a test of competition. Is permutation of test of competition. The midterms DID. Ag collapse causes global nuclear war. Food insecurity is a catalyst for global instability. Causes widespread state filled with power vacuums and inflames existing conflicts resulting in countries going to war to secure access to food. Miscalculation and triodide mindsets means the trigger for nuclear conflict, which outweighs. That is the FDI evidence independently. This outweighs one time frame which would frame about solvency for their impacts is based on large-scale changes to the healthcare market, which certainly doesn't happen overnight. But the GOP would immediately transfer their 2018 win into immigration restrictions that would spike food prices globally, causing shockwaves of instability. I do not care how good healthcare is in the world of the app, because you cannot use healthcare if you were burnt to the crisp by nuclear explosions, which they've conceded will happen as a result of the plan. The first argument on the line by line was that Trump's approval rating matters. That we have really good evidence on this, which proves that the uniqueness rate goes in our direction. They can see there are two cards we read here, which are fantastic. One, the Smith 17 card. The polls about Trump's approval rating include states like California and New York, where he's incredibly unpopular, which skews this data, means all of this data is very misleading. In the states that Trump could, that the GOP actually could flip, i.e. the Democrats who are up for re-election in very red states, he is pretty popular, which provides some uniqueness for us. Second, their other warrant, their only warrant for why Trump is incredibly unpopular is Russia. But that is super misleading, because most voters do not actually care about Russia nearly as much as they care about the healthcare agenda. Our Cooper card on here, which is from July and really good, says that voters are worried about the Russian investigations are preventing Congress from tackling issues more vital, and the only way that the Democrats can actually capitalize on Trump's unpopularity is by capitalizing on the fact that the GOP has failed on healthcare, which they will not be able to do in a world where the plan fixes the GOP's failure on healthcare. They say that the plan is a loss from advertising, propaganda, etc. I'm going to do all of the link debate here. This all their evidence doesn't apply, because they consider really good evidence about how the single payer draws in the key demographics. We have fantastic evidence on this question. If you are skeptical at all about the link after the round, I invite you to read all of our link evidence before you make the decision. You will find that it's incredibly good. I'm going to do some work to extend it here. So one, single payer is a massive win for Trump. It eliminates the Dems' moral high ground in healthcare and electrifies Trump's base of poor voters. Overwhelming support of 60% of the population. The president's spin game and history supporting global healthcare nullifies any risk of a link to. That's the Blake evidence there. Evidence is from before GOP healthcare imploded. The only evidence that they read in the 2AC, I'm not even sure if they extended in the 1AR, which means that it's outdated. Single payer is actually popular now. Uniquely, it gives the GOP crucial leverage over Democrats and ensures Republicans hold on to white working class voters. The Buckley card indicates that the GOP base is dissatisfied. The reason why the GOP will not get a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate now is because of healthcare. Universal healthcare flips this and takes out ground for Democrats Democratic attacks, which is Buckley and the Buckley card and the Madar card. Democrats are centering their campaign on healthcare. The GOP fixes it. They are out of issues. The Democrats are out of issues to campaign on. They will actually win, which means that they lose the filibuster. All this stuff was pretty much conceded. And framing issue for all their evidence on this question is based off of 2009 assumptions, which was the Frank card. Single-payer healthcare was unpopular then, but it is strong now, strongly favored by voters. The backlash of the ACA proves HCA proves this. Now the Chang evidence, they say the Chang evidence as impact defense. The best study our evidence, or the Bagozzi evidence, was conceded, which cites much better studies than their Chang card, which is like one line long and pretty much just says that capitalism and free markets are key to innovation. First of all, that is not a warrant for why they solve food insecurity, but also that disproves some of the act, because it means that the neoliberalism of the plan curtails is actually key to resolve some of the structural violence that the act talks about. But either way, the Bagozzi evidence is much better than your Chang card. It cites a literature review and finds a consistent empirical link between food insecurity and violent conflict, which proves that the thesis of the FDI card is true. They say this Plumer card that immigration restrictions do not actually hurt ag. Again, this card is from 2013. Obviously, does not assume Trump's massive deportations, which would be much worse. So you should not give any weight to this argument at all. They say the level of enforcement is impossible for these immigration restrictions. Trump has the authority to do this. They don't have a single piece of evidence on this. We do. That was the DI-16 card that we read in the 1 and C. They would say have not answered this. They would say have not answered this entire round, which means you have to err negative on the question on all the internal link stuff, because they conceded in the 2AC. The 2AC. Yeah, we're winning a pretty good link to all of our impacts. Now, the biggest reason you are voting negative, though, is because they have conceded. They have conceded our Trump impact, which turns the entirety of the act, because Democrats have to maintain the filibuster to check Trump. He's incredibly controversial. Agenda cannot pass without Democratic votes. If Democrats lose the filibuster, the GOP and Congress will pass virtually any policy, no matter how violent. Now, obviously, Trump's presidency has been horrific so far, but you should realize we are only seeing a tiny percentage of what he is capable of. Overcoming the filibuster is key. The act enables an agenda that threatens the lives of millions of the most vulnerable, i.e. Muslims, the poor, immigrants, victims of sexual abuse, not to mention billions in the global south who will be affected by climate change and killed in wars from increased U.S. imperialism overseas. Trump's agenda will further legitimize the ideology of white supremacists and sexists. They have to prioritize these impacts. They outweigh any benefits of the act. Consequentialism is key in this instance, because voting after is the equivalent of just pretending this violence isn't real, which means that it should be your first priority. The structural violence advantage. I'm going to do some of the framing stuff here. The only argument I'm going to go for on the framing debate is why you should prefer a high war and a high magnitude impacts is because war turns all of the structural violence stuff into fuel massive injustices, and it's impossible to work for peace in a world where you aren't even sure whether or not you will be alive the next day. That is the Goldstein evidence and the Elshtain evidence. They conceded both of these cards. Also, the impacts we're going from the DA obviously mean we access a massive internal link to structural violence as per the rest of Trump's agenda, which the plan makes possible, which means that we outweigh all this structural violence stuff anyway, because it is a question of structural violence against billions versus structural violence of just a few million people in the U.S. from lack of healthcare. Now, the health advantage, we outweigh this advantage. There is a risk of extinction for food wars. This is at best a couple of thousands of deaths per year. Obviously, that outweighs because they haven't made a claim that you should hurt. And even if they win, they decommodify society and resolve food deserts, etc. All of that stuff is cool and good, but our impacts still outweigh. I did some of that work above. You can't decommodify society if they were dead. Now, they don't solve any of this case stuff. Access to healthcare doesn't necessarily result in better health. I will do some work here on the book card, which they never answer. The one is he never answered the rationing argument, which was the biggest one in our book 9 card. Takes out the claim that access for equals healthcare under the plan. Book 9 turns their entire public health solvency rationing will occur because doctors will drop out of the field and their incomes will decline. Their incomes drop because of lower healthcare payments under single payer. When incomes drop, fewer people will go and get the medicine they need, and physicians will spend less time with patients. All of this stuff were specific warrants that the 1AR conceded, which means that the actual quality of care under the plan is lower than the status quo.
good to go. I'm gonna put case on top, basically just going down the flow, and then the politics decide.
Cool.
Cool. All right. All right, so first on case, the biggest impact in this round is the fact that there's one person dying every 12 minutes from the lack of healthcare. They keep on talking about time frame and about how they're weighing on time frame. They even make this argument about how we don't know if we're going to be alive tomorrow. But the only argument in this round, the only scenario that has an immediate time frame is our health advantage, where people are dying in the status quo immediately because they can't access healthcare. They never really seem to understand this or how the lack of access to healthcare happens. This happens because people feel like they're going to be a burden to their families if they decide to get into an ambulance, or maybe the ambulance just doesn't make it in time, or they feel like they can handle it by themselves because they would rather not get healthier, and they would rather not be a burden to anyone else. This is thousands of people every year. This is 100% probability. We know this is happening in the status quo right now. Extend all of my partners framing arguments about how you should vote on probability. It's incredibly important for us. It's incredibly important for us to talk about things that we know are happening rather than all of their nebulous advantages. This is especially important in a round where all of their framing arguments where all of their arguments are about Trump, and we literally cannot predict. Where they say that their most important impact is about Trump, we literally cannot predict anything that Trump is going to do. We have no idea what is going to happen next. We have no idea what the probability of any of their remarks are, because Trump could do literally anything tomorrow and make literally any decision. So ours is the only one that you can have any kind of certainty about, which is why it's incredibly important for you to vote affirmative. And okay, thank you. Okay, and on the Book 09 card, the idea that plan reduces access only holds under the condition of the card, which is the existence of multiple competing players, which prevents the government from lowering prices. We are rejection of the idea of competing private insurance. So the fact that they're trying to completely misrepresent what their book card says basically just shows that they don't really care about creating national health insurance or helping any of these marginalized populations. They're really just about strategy, and they're really just here about strategy and round. And on the politics side, first of all, on uniqueness, they say that uniqueness flows negative because blue states skews Trump's approval rating. This isn't really how approval ratings are calculated. They don't seem to fully understand that approval ratings are based on a national average. So Trump's approval rating is